Faza'il A'mal, More Trouble Than It's Worth, Part 25. Bukhari and Muslim's Criteria, Muhammad Awwama's Many Errors.
Similarly, Hazrat goes on to explain the subha. Tasbih, bhai thoda time dena padega. Subha. पूरा करना है, इसको पूरा करना, छेड़ेंगे नहीं, छोड़ेंगे नहीं, अभी 2 minutes do extra. As-subha, tasbih. People say that the Sufis go around with tasbih is bid'ah. Now remember one thing, tasbih for show is bid'ah. It's wrong. Just to show people, like you see people flashy tasbih, just talking and just moving the throat without any zikr. That is show off. That is riya. That's no good. But if you have tasbih for zikr, then this is zikr of Allah. How can you see it's bid'ah? The hadith, Hazrat brings in the hadith of Hazrat Safiya radiallahu anha, who was sitting with 4,000 date seeds in front of her, and she was counting her tasbih on there. So Hazrat said, if the date seeds are separate, or whether you join them in one piece of string, they're both same. The aim is to count how much you have done. So the counter is allowed, whether it is in the form of tasbih.
Now we come to the conditions of hadith scholars. In fact, the two most well-known books of hadith and the two most well-known scholars in the whole of Islam in the subject of hadith. The first is Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, and the second is Muslim ibn Hajjaj al-Naysaburi, known as Bukhari and Muslim. And this is what it says on page 302. It is worth mentioning that hadith scholars took several preventative and curative measures to preserve the prophetic sunnah, including concerns with chains of narrations and collection of reports attributed to the Prophet, along with their chains of narration so as to distinguish the good from the bad, as done by Al-Bukhari and Muslim with their compilations. These measures included, and he gives 4 measures. 1, or A, the setting of precise and specific rules for the criticizing of reports and their narrators. 2, the compilation of separate dictionaries of specific types of narrators, such as weak reporters and liars, to distinguish them from others. And I've given you whole books to read. I'm thinking specifically of Scott C. Lucas's work on Ilm al-Rijal. Number 3, the undertaking of studies by some hadith scholars of narrations cited in famous books of jurisprudence, exegesis, and the such, to distinguish the authentic from the weak. And 4, the compilation of hadith scholars, of books of hadith dedicated to false, fabricated, and baseless ahadith, in such a way that it will be easy for people to be aware of them and hence avoid them. This last measure can be considered one of the most important results of the efforts of scholars to defend the prophetic sunnah and preserve its purity. Now, the Deobandi cult follower that was referenced in the beginning of this video, Abdul Rahim Limbada, he actually criticizes one modern day scholar, Muhammad Nasiruddin Al-Albani, for compiling these 4th type of books. So, for example, the Da'if of Ibn Majah, or the Da'if of Abu Dawood, or the Da'if of Tirmidhi, Nasa'i. And he says that Bukhari and Muslim, according to Al-Albani, contains weak narrations. He criticizes Albani for collecting these hadith, weak hadith collections. When in fact this is something that hadith scholars in the past, it's one of the 4 main criteria that hadith scholars used in order to distinguish the good from the bad. In any case, enough with the TJ and enough with the FA. I now continue with the 1983 McGill master's thesis written by Masood Salim Abdul Qadir, and I give you a page which is, in my opinion, the most important page in the whole of the thesis, and it's page number 6, and it's talking about another very famous scholar who is problematic in the science of hadith. His name is Muhammad Awwama, and his book was mentioned in part number 24. And this page actually gives you the approach and the epistemology and the methodology of people who reject hadith in favor of following a school of law. And following a school of law, following qualified scholarship, is called taqleed. And if a person was someone who was argumentative, they would use the term blind following a madhab. But I will use the term following qualified scholarship. So Awwama's book is the only work that deals exclusively with hadith being one of the causes of disagreements amongst jurists. But his study, Awwama's study, is not comprehensive in the sense that he does not deal with all the aspects of the subject. So the other books that I mentioned in the previous part are more detailed. This, I think, was a natural outcome of a scholarly mistake on the part of Muhammad Awwama. He arrives at a conclusion first, and then starts to explain material that would corroborate it. That is the most important sentence in the whole of this 155-page book. He arrives at a conclusion first, and then starts to explain material that would corroborate it. So a person who wanted to follow the Quran, the Sunnah, would actually look at what the Quran, Sunnah said, and then arrive at a conclusion as to what it means. The Muhammad Awwamas and the Zahid al-Kawtharis of the world reverse that procedure. And then he continues, he advocates taqleed, following qualified scholarship, very strongly, and upholds that no one today exercise ijtihad, which is jurisprudential ratiocination, or coming to conclusions about jurisprudence in a modern sense. The safest way, therefore, is taqleed, and to follow the accepted four eponymous imams. This study, Muhammad Awwama's study, contains many scholarly errors. And I'll give one example of these errors. So this is the first example, and it's talking about the things that make a hadith sahih, which is rigorously authentic on its own. And there are three main things. Well, there are 5 conditions here, but I'll only give you 3 of the 5. The first one is it has to have connection, and the second one is that it has to have upright narrators. The third one, it has to be accurate, and the fourth one, it has to have absence of shududh, which is aberrant features. But this illustrates the ignorance or the ineptitude of Muhammad Awwama in narrating narrations. And this is not something that someone should take to be an attack on Muhammad Awwama. It quite clearly shows that he has not understood Bukhari and Muslim. And again, as always, go to the thesis yourself, go to the sources and the resources and references that he gives, and make up your own mind. So he says, the first condition, the first thing for a Sahih Hadith, connection. What seems strange is Awwama's view that the condition that Al-Bukhari stipulated that the 2 narrators should have met in order to make a Hadith Sahih, while Muslim, the other Hadith scholar, was content with the proof that they were contemporaries. So that's a strange conclusion that he reaches. And the reason why it's strange is continued on this page. Therefore, the conclusion that Awwama reached is wrong. For he says, while Sahih Muslim declares a Sahih based on the concept that the 2 narrators should only be contemporaries, is not considered Sahih absolutely by Bukhari. The truth is that Bukhari does consider such a Hadith as Sahih, but he lays down more stringent conditions to include a Hadith in his own book. These 2 pages may need to be read several times to grasp exactly what's being said, but the long and short of it is Muhammad Awwama is not understanding the difference between what Bukhari and Muslim consider to be authentic Hadith, and that is a problem indeed. So read the literature, crack the books, and read for yourself about these individuals. Stay tuned for many more parts.